Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie. Patriots Against CPS Corruption invites you to attend our March for Texas Children. DFPS has failed the families of Texas. The Texas Special Committee on DFPS has also failed to hear the parents and their children. Time to make our voices heard. Surround yourself with those on the same mission as you. Join us on the March for Our Children, September 21st, 2022, starting at 1 p.m. at 701 West 51st Street, Austin, Texas, 78751. I have a brand new guest on. Her name is Antonella. She's from New York. She is a victim of one of the most horrific cases in Rockland County, New York. She's got a judge who is so untouchable, and her ex has the money and connections that so much so that her daughter and her son went to court to beg the judge that they want to live with the mother. And the verbal and emotional abuse was so bad, the judge didn't care and said, "You sound like your mother." Now, we're going to talk about this because there is a lot of things of collusion with this case and a lot of control in the courts. And we're going to talk about how this poor mother was assigned a gatekeeper. And now she's at the appellate court with this case. So I'm going to let her talk and explain some more. But, everyone should know that, judges receive donations and they give donations. And this judge donates to the Center of Safety and Change. And also, one fact that the mother told me was the ex had filed contempt, and the judge stated after court was over with, off the record, she said in a loud voice to her ex, "I give you permission to tell the kids that their mother doesn't want to see them." When the mother questioned people around that had heard this, they acted like they didn't want to get involved. So Antonella, I welcome you to the show, and tell us how your case is and how are you doing?
Hi, how are you?
Hi.
I'm hanging in there. It's been a long battle. I miss my children. Unfortunately, it's been over a year that I haven't seen them due to this back and forth. Unfortunately, in my case, this judge and my ex-husband has done everything they could to silence my children and myself. And every opportunity or evidence I was able to prove or give to the court, it was denied. Every time my children, especially my daughter, who's now 13 and a half, so she's able to speak on her behalf, we've been, shut down, pretty much ignored. And my children actually had two AFCs. The court, my case was in Supreme Court. So, when you're in Supreme Court, you have to pay. You're paying private paid AFCs, court appointed attorneys for the children. And you're spending a lot of money. Everyone's getting paid. If it's therapists, parent coordinators, forensic evaluators, they start bringing them all in. And everyone's there not for the best interest of the children or for the alienated parent. They're there to make money. What the connections with, if it's the judge. In fact, my ex-husband kept saying, I was mentally ill. Meanwhile, I raised my children. I raised them from day one. I was a stay-home mom. I raised them. He was, he traveled, he worked, he was committed to his work. And I was okay then. I was okay to raise them. I was okay to be involved as a, stay-home mom and being involved in the school. I was stable to, I've worked with children, as a profession. I was a dental assistant, worked with children. I was okay then. And then when it was time to go through this divorce, and, there was talk about child support or, only seeing the children partial of the time or whatever it was. All of a sudden, I was mentally ill. I was, false allegations were thrown out there. And when he even just having a forensic evaluator, this evaluator was court appointed by the attorney. I'm sorry, the judge. The judge was the one who picked the forensic evaluator, and my ex-husband paid this forensic evaluator. So what do you think the outcome's going to be?
Right.
It was, it took me, a while to figure out how the system was going against me and the children. I now I'm at 3 years into this divorce proceeding. Now I see how it all kind of fell into, like, how my case started to spiral for the worse. And that's why I want to tell my story, because I want to spread awareness and prepare, parents that, that are going through this, or, God forbid they do go through this, that to be aware and be careful that this is not, unfortunately, it's not for the best interest of the children. This is a money making, business for these attorneys and these professionals and judges. Now my case is now, I'm trying to appeal everything. I'm pro se. Whatever money, I did get through in the marriage is gone. I was court appointed. I'm sorry, I was court ordered to pay. Once I got some of the assets, money, whatever it was, from there, that's when the judge used that and said, okay, now I'm court ordering you to pay for this, pay for that, to the point where that money would just then go. And then I would be bankrupt. Like it was like I was set to fail. Anything that I was able to accomplish, or I was court ordered to be set to fail. If you know what I'm saying, like it was that money is gone now, and I had to go pro se. And the courts they want to get for you to get to a point where you give up, where you say, I can't mentally handle this, where they want you to go to a point where you do go crazy, or you do something that, that gets to you arrested or whatever it is, because there's these court orders that you have to follow as if, you're like a criminal, my case, I'm at the point where the judge, my ex-husband, would constantly bring me back to court. I would say just as something as I was asked to be class mom for my son, brought me to court order me not to be class. It was to that point where now I have lost all communication and access to the children. I have a gatekeeper now, not only in Supreme Court, but in family court. And that came up when I filed a petition in family court because of my daughter's well-being. I was receiving messages. She's not even allowed to communicate with me. I mean, it's to that point where I can't communicate with my children or even have FaceTime. And I was concerned about her well-being. She was telling me she wanted to kill herself. She's not happy with the decisions that this judge made. She's miserable. She's being tortured. And when I tried to present that in family court, the family court was told to bring my petition up to this Supreme Court in front of this judge. And with that, every time I would present anything, I would be punished. If you want to say punished, okay, put a gatekeeper, but not only in Supreme Court, but she had put a gatekeeper in family court. So I wouldn't be able to, I'm permitted to file anything without this judge's permission. So there's her control. There you go. So without her permission, I can't, if she doesn't approve any motion or petition or anything that I want to submit in court, then she can deny it, just as simple as that. So my case right now, I have a lot of, I'm in the appellate court, I'm appealing, I'm doing the best I can as, pro se. And and I'm just, not going to stop fighting to get, to get my kids back.
Mhm. Well, this judge has also had problems. There's an article that says Rockland judge tied to FBI sting. This was
Yes,
published in July 6th of 2016 by Lee Higgins and Jonathan Bandler, where it says
yes,
family court judge Sherri Eisenpress was where she was elected in 2011. But now, however, she was at the center of a political corruption probe that brought down the former state Senate Majority Leader, says he helped elect Rockland Family Court Judge Sherri Eisenpress by using her money to bankroll an
right.
illegal campaign finance scheme and by bribing a public official, an investigation by the Journal News found. It just doesn't end with
This
the
is the
corruption.
person, right? This is the person that is supposed to protect families and our children and do the right thing to make sure, both parents, not just one. And that's what I was, when I was going through my divorce proceeding, I actually wanted to mediate. I did not want to
Mhm.
take this and drag it and lose all my money. I knew where it would go in
Mm,
court. I did not want that. But you know, once my ex realized he would lose his control and there was going to be money that he would have to pay because, he makes significant amount of money.
mhm.
He was like, no, he basically told me to my face, no, I'm going to get custody. I'm going to get the kids and you're going to have nothing. That's where he then went ahead and filed an affidavit and attacked me, and put it, kept it in court and in front of this judge, knowing what, you know, what the advantage he had, with
Mhm.
these false allegations, saying I alienated him from the children. Unfortunately, the children didn't really have much of a relationship with him because, um, of just, him just focusing on work and not being around. But that's the scary part that, that's just one article. I mean, I know there was about 4 or 5 years ago, there was a petition trying to remove the judge off the bench because of, I'm one of many cases, this is, of the corruption, of the fact
Mhm.
that she thinks it's okay to pick one particular parent to be the parent and then isolate the other parent. I
Mhm.
think a judge, especially a family court judge, she's an active Supreme Court judge, but she's elected as a family court judge. The goal is to keep both parents in the children's or child's life.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I mean,
Well, let me ask you this. I don't know how much you know about her, but does she have kids or a family of her own?
from my understanding, I know she had adopted a child, foster
Mhm.
child, but
Right. So she's never
not,
carried a baby for 9 months or delivered a
no,
baby or
no,
was up at
not that
night
I've,
with a baby.
yeah, right. Something that I did, yeah,
Right.
no, no, not, from my understanding, no. And I sometimes wonder, the people that are supposed to, you know, they're the ones who are determining our future, our life, our children's future. These are the people that, um, you know, I went into court, she knows nothing about me. She doesn't know me as a person, as a mother, the kind of mother I was or am, how much I mean to my children, how much of, the love and the dedication I've given to my children.
Mhm.
Um, it can get a little emotional. I'm sorry.
That's okay because these judges really identify with the opposition, the more aggressive, alienating parent. They identify with these narcissistic, sociopathic personalities. Instead of picking out the personality disorder and saying, "Hey, wait a minute, that father or that mother's not behaving well in court. Obviously, I see a fit, loving parent over here. They're not doing that. All they see and all that they recognize from being attorneys and turning into judges, which are also, these family court judges are child abusers in black robes. So they're identifying with a narcissist, sociopath, borderline personality disorder. So they gravitate to that. Maybe he was
Right.
wearing a suit, yeah, that she
Well,
liked.
yes, yes, he does very well. He speaks very well in court. Yes, he comes in a suit. I'm just a, ordinary, person growing up in a middle class, and just kind of was a very down to earth, and, not having the education or, the ability of speaking publicly the way my ex, had or is, the way he, with his, line of work that he does. So yeah, he presented himself differently, but it's interesting that you said, about, finding that the personality disorder. What was interesting was this forensic evaluator, never diagnosed me as having a personality disorder, but sort of threw in like, oh, she may have a tendency, but then acknowledged the control and the narcissism of my ex-husband, but still then in the end, made his suggestions. But to even try to, prove my stability and my mental state, and I was even court ordered to get reevaluated. I did. I got more than once. I got reevaluated twice by very well reputable forensic evaluators, and there was no findings. I was, I was fine. But it was interesting when I had that proof and those reports, the judge denied them as evidence.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like, and then what was more interesting, in the end, my ex and I did agree to a 50-50, because I was told if I don't, I will lose custody, considering this judge. And so I did, because I knew my children wanted me to be the primary caregiver, but I was trying to do the right thing and be fair. And I was trying to avoid, further, conflict or any sort of, interaction with this judge. And with that, my ex filed a contempt motion a few months later, almost a year later, making these allegations that I was communicating with my daughter, because there's a court order that I'm not to communicate with her. The judge decided to, with that, use that to her advantage to change this contempt motion into a trial for custody. With that, there was no findings putting me in contempt or any evidence, right? But she then easily decided to sign a judgment of divorce with changing her own rulings in this judgment of divorce, right? That's why I appealed that. And then changed custody, giving him sole legal custody without accepting any of my evidence. At the time I was pro se, which gave the judge the advantage of attacking me, gave the advantage of my ex-husband bringing in not one, but two attorneys, two. He had two attorneys. And right there, I mean, it was a lose-lose situation for me. So that's why, yeah, I'm in the appellate court. Unfortunately, the appellate court, it takes time. You have to perfect. I mean, it's a whole process. Sometimes you have to extend your, deadlines and stuff. And unfortunately, throughout this whole process, it's been almost a year. I have not been able to see my children, talk to them. I've tried reaching out to his attorney, because I have a no contact with my ex. If I try to even communicate with him, he files contempt motions.
Well, you know what? Then that makes him a child abuser as well.
Yes. I mean, where do you have to prove, like, who's really being alienated? Like, who is really not making sure that the children do not see the other parent. I mean, I'm
Mhm.
doing everything I can. I've, I'm,
Mm.
there was an attorney that told me that this judge now is my God.
Ugh.
And I laughed and I said, really? Because my God is not, not, not this judge. My God is someone who is, loving and caring. Like it's scary when someone actually says that to you, when they
Mhm.
say, this is your God now. And that is a scary feeling, because I didn't choose for this person to be my God. I didn't
Mm-mm.
choose, my children didn't choose for this person to be my God. I mean, it was just a little, I was taken back when the attorney, this one particular attorney told me this, and I was like, wow, I mean, this must be something that you see a lot, that you actually even said that to me. And then
Mm.
what I tried doing was, I was told to comply, just listen, just do
Mm.
it, just listen, just pay, listen to what the judge says. And I did. I did it because I was advised to do it. I did it because I thought maybe, okay, maybe I can prove to this judge that I'm not crazy, or I'm trying to make sure the father has a relationship with the children. But in the end, by complying, I was only allowing, and I was accepting uh for these actions to be made, or I, it was almost like, I was accepting that, yeah, no, this is what needs to be done, you know.
Mhm.
Um, and that's when I started realizing I unfortunately had to go through a few attorneys to realize that, oh, wait, the attorneys are in on it.
Mhm.
And I'm like, oh, wow, and they figure, let me get on the case and make some money off of it.
Mhm.
It's very unfortunate. But now I'm now I know, and now I'm just doing everything I can now on my end to you know win my children back.
Well, I mean, it's just so disgraceful that every one of these attorneys and judges, they're all in on this together. A person's case is decided before they walk in the courtroom.
Yes.
And then you have the Association of Family and Conciliation Courts, Association of Family and Conciliation Courts, and they're not helping at all. Um,
Right.
the thing is, with this judge writing orders of no contact, essentially what was done to you was done to me. I was called mentally ill. They called CPS on me. They destroyed my nursing career. They took the kids away with no contact. And the judge even wrote on Mother's Day.
Oh,
Yeah. So there's a
well,
bunch of them out there.
yes, it's unfortunate. I have missed birthdays,
Hmm.
Christmas, Mother's Day. I would say almost every holiday. Um, it got to a point where my daughter wanted to see me on my birthday,
Hmm.
and we had to go to court. My daughter asked her court appointed attorney to write a letter. I mean, where do you get to a point where the judge says, obviously this child, this child wants to be with her mother, where how much does my children have to, beg and say,
Hmm.
listen, mom never abused us. Mom never told us not to be with dad. Mom, and wrote a letter, asking her attorney to write a letter saying, I want to see my mom for a couple of hours. And having a court, virtual court appearance, just for my children to see me for a couple of hours on my birthday. um I don't even know what to say about that. Like, I don't, it just doesn't make sense.
No, it
Yeah,
doesn't.
I mean, it's, I mean, I've unfortunately, my children have been dragged in the courtroom, literally in the courtroom, to the point where my children sat, you know, in the courtroom being questioned, which is sort of unheard of, because I've been told that, you know, the children should never be
Mhm.
involved in these custody cases, but the judge had ordered for the children to come in, not once, but more than once. I remember there was a time where I was told to tell the children that mommy is not well and mommy needs to get better, and that you need to live with your father. This is what I was told on the record to say. Of course, I refused.
Mhm.
And I was threatened, and I would say, well, I was really pressured and threatened, but I got to a point where I'm like, no, I am not putting that on the record. I don't believe that. I am
Mhm.
perfectly fine. And then I remember that day, they wanted the calls to be recorded Zoom calls. Actually, they said Zoom calls. They didn't say record. It was my daughter who overheard the judge lean over to my ex-husband's attorney, whispering to her, saying, I want you to record them,
Mhm.
as if she was going to take that and record these recordings and use it against me. They would find one little thing and then hold it against me. And unfortunately, I was aware of it. And there was a time where my daughter was upset. My ex-husband must have did something right before she had to get on a call with me. It was and my daughter was extremely upset. In
Mhm.
fact, she was afraid to even speak because he was behind the door listening.
Mhm.
And I kept asking her, is there what's going on? Is everything okay, honey? I wanted to make sure she was okay. I don't think that's anything wrong for a parent asking what's going on. I'm on the
Right.
other side. Like, I could only, help so much. And she was
Mhm.
extremely upset. My ex took that to court and said that I have Munchausen syndrome. They accused of me of having Munchausen syndrome, or disorder, whatever you call it, and that I was causing trauma to my daughter. And that's when they removed all phone calls, FaceTime with my kids. I later on realized that my ex-husband asked to court order that because it was interfering with his social time, because my children had to call me at a certain time in the evening. And if it was a weekend, he had to stop what he was doing, go home and make sure the children called me. And that was an
Mhm.
interference. He eventually moved in his girlfriend, who they've been on
Mm.
and off. And that he knew that once he had her in the home, can't have these FaceTimes with the kids. Um, and I found it so disturbing that this
Mhm.
judge was going along with all this, how she felt that was more important, what my ex-husband needed or wanted in his, like, oh no, it's an interference. Oh no, we can't have these calls. That's a little disturbing that's more important than a parent who barely sees her kids, it's wanting to have that connection or relationship with their child, and the
Mhm.
child is asking for that. That's where I find it a little bit disturbing, unlawful.
See, this is very important that you bring this up because this seems to be a very common pattern with these alienators. Even like with my ex, if I was able to even see my child, he had to stand 5 feet away. And if I whispered something, he would
Yes.
admonish me,
Hmm.
because I'm that crazy.
Right.
Uh, they all follow this pattern.
Well, so I was supervised. I was court ordered to be supervised, and supervised. I raised my kids. I gave them nothing but love, and I protected them, and I made sure they were fed and bathed, and I did everything I could to make they were happy. They were very
Mhm.
happy My
Mhm.
children went from a happy life, happy home, to probably the worst thing that ever happened to them. And what's scary is they don't deserve this. And so now I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
Oh,
But
that's
so
okay.
then I was court appointed. I had to be supervised. I was kicked out of the home. I was supervised. And I went through, if you add them all up, 8 different supervisors, because my ex-husband, because all of my reports were all positive, good reports. And he was trying to use these reports to find one bad thing. In fact, there was a few reports on my ex-husband that was negative, because my children would come to me expressing what's going on in the home, how they're being treated, what's
Mhm.
happening. And what is a supervisor supposed to do? They report everything. They write everything down, that they document everything, that whatever they witness, whatever they're seeing. And I was supervised. And not only was it was private supervised, at one point the judge then wanted to really torture me and the children, and put me in to had us go to a facility where it was very monitored, and it was very there was only certain times and days that they were even open, and we were sitting in a parking lot in a room with a table and chairs. And I mean, that's how, I mean, I wasn't allowed to give him gifts. God forbid I gave him something. My ex-husband said, oh, she gave her a candle. She gave her, it was so ridiculous. But it
Mhm.
got to a point where I went through 8 supervisors, because my ex-husband kept saying, she's not being supervised properly. It got to a point where the supervisors had offered to testify. They were like, we are willing to testify on your behalf that there has never been anything inappropriate, that you have done nothing inappropriate to the children or to your ex-husband. And you know what the judge said? That's not necessary. But yet you won't take away supervised visits. And my children have even expressed, like, we don't need to be supervised. There were a few occasions that I was unsupervised. And I always had someone with me, though, because I
Mhm.
just didn't trust my ex-husband. There was
Right.
always someone with me. I always made sure there was someone with me. Um,
Mhm.
and everything was fine. So I don't, I didn't understand why the judge refused to, continue the supervised visits. I believe, and I know the reason why she kept supervised visits were to financially hurt me, because it was I spent a lot of money just paying a private paid supervisor. It
Mhm.
was also to make sure the children went back with the father, because they didn't want to go back. And there was a few times where it was a struggle for the kids to go back. So it was like a guarantee that, okay, the supervisor would have to force the children back. What does that tell you, though?
Mhm.
When a child is crying and screaming that, I don't want to go back. I want to be with you. I want to spend more time with you. Mommy, I want to live with, I mean, it's heartbreaking,
Mhm.
when you see your children hurting, and
Mhm.
that,
And you're powerless.
I find it interesting that, criminals have more freedom
Mhm.
than parents like us.
Mhm.
I've even asked the judge. I got to a point where I ran out of money. I said, I'm entitled to a court appointed attorney. I'm entitled to have an attorney. And because in Supreme Court, I kept getting denied. The judge kept saying no, 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 no. And which then I was never fairly represented. I was, you know, so, unfortunately
It's amazing that they can go against the Constitution and your rights as, a litigant and just steamroll over the whole thing.
I mean, just the
Be
gatekeeper is right there
Right.
is a violation of my constitutional rights.
Mhm.
You're basically, I file one petition, and on this gatekeeper, it says, they ordered this gatekeeper because of numerous frivolous motions and petition. I filed one petition. My ex-husband filed more motions than I ever did throughout this whole court proceeding, but I'm the one who she ordered the gatekeeper. What I found interesting was the judge would tell my ex-husband to file motions, because when you file a motion, it has to be heard, right? It's
Right.
in, you file this motion. And so then that's where the judge can then address the matter, and she can order whatever court order, whatever she feels like court ordering or whatever. And a lot of these motions was based on he said, she said, like it was based on what he would present without evidence.
Mhm.
It was his word against mine. There was no findings or evidence. It was just, he would say these things. He wouldn't have, the evidence to prove it. And that's when it became false allegations, right?
Mhm.
And she would listen to him. And every time I would try to speak, she would shut me down. She would tell me to be quiet. She would threaten me. She would put me in jail. I must have gotten threatened to be put in jail numerous times. I've been threatened that I would be put in a mental institution for 90 days. I mean, there was an order that the judge put out saying I would be court ordered to go to jail on the weekends. So it would allow me to work during the week, and then I would have to admit myself in jail on a Friday and be released on a Sunday. But then she's like, okay, I'll put that, I'll put that on hold. But there was an order that she was going to actually do that. Like she would have me go to jail on the weekends. I mean, I've been threatened many times. I had just recently purchased a home with the hopes that, I can provide for my children a home in their school district. And I was threatened, if I don't tell them how much I purchased this home, she would put me in jail. I mean, every time anything, if I didn't, answer the question, or I was always constantly being threatened to be put in jail. Talk about abuse and bullying,
That's extreme legal abuse and a waste of taxpayer dollars to have someone work through the week and then go through the processing and all the paperwork to even enter the jail, and then all the processing and paperwork to get out. So that's such a waste of taxpayer dollars. See, I don't think taxpayers know this stuff goes on. If they
Yes.
knew how their tax dollars are being spent by these judges.
But yet criminals get put back on the street. Like she's an active Supreme Court judge. She handles cases like criminal cases, and she'll put them out on the street. But then someone like me who just wants to be a parent to my children is so eager and easily, to put me in jail for what? Because I'm sticking up for myself, because I want to see my children, because I want to be a part of my children's lives. You're going to put me in jail for what? For what grounds? Like, what did I do that you feel that you need to put me in jail? What did I do so bad? Because I never hurt my children. My children have never said I physically abused them. I emotionally abused them. There has been no harm to my children. My children have been, like I said, they were very happy. Where do you feel? Where does someone feel that they feel that I need to be put in jail? For what? For sticking, for wanting to be with my children, for fighting, for not giving up? And I will never give up.
I think she has ulterior motives of getting you out of your kids' lives, along with your ex and his child abusing attorneys as well. I mean, this is child psychological abuse.
Yes. And legal abuse, the financial part, in Supreme Court. I work with children. I work in an elementary school. I was a dental assistant for many years. I have my early childhood certification, work that I could work with children. I work with children with young children. And when I did go back to work, because I was home, and then when everything started, going through the divorce process, I went back to work. Um, I was a little worried because, I wonder sometimes that they were going to the constant threat of putting me in jail would have jeopardized my job.
Mhm.
When you work with children, they do a full background check.
Mhm.
They take fingerprints. I mean, it's serious stuff.
Mhm.
And that was my fear was, I work with these children. And I work with, are they doing this to try to sabotage my career with working with the children? I was trying to, and that just that alone, I was, because people are like, oh, well, they're in what grounds can she really put you in jail? That's, violating your constitutional rights. And I'm like, no, I get it, but the last thing I need is, having being put in jail and having a criminal background. I lose my
Mhm.
job, my career, something that I love to do, something that I'm good at.
Mhm.
Um, but it's interesting. I'm good at what I do. I work with children. But yet I can't be with my own children. I can't raise my own
Mhm.
children. I can't. I'm being supervised just to see my children. And I can't even get to that point because my ex-husband,
Mhm.
I've tried contacting his attorney. Yeah, no, nothing. They've done everything they could to kind of put these little hiccups, like to prevent me from even getting to the point where I can start seeing my children. Um, so
That's so wrong.
yeah,
This is happening to a lot of good mothers and good, decent fathers,
yes,
that they're being put through the supervised visitation. And these visitation centers, I think some of them pay into the AFCC,
yeah,
like the Family Wizard. Um,
yes. I mean, I've even tried, I don't know too much about the Family Wizard, but I thought, I've even requested that just so that to have some sort of proof or like some way of like protecting like me because my ex-husband would make these accusations saying, oh, she's doing something inappropriate or she's emailing. So I did try even asking for that. And I don't know too much about it. Some people are for it, some people are not. I don't know too much
mhm.
about it. I thought in my case it would be a benefit because then I thought, well, it would be some sort of, proof or, something that I'm allowed to communicate with my
Mhm.
ex-husband um without, because right now I'm court ordered. I can't communicate with him. And if I
Mhm.
try to, he files, he can file a contempt motion. So it's like, how do you co-parent when you can't, when they're not allowing you to communicate with the other parent?
Mhm.
And I thought the Family Wizard, if we don't have a parent coordinator, I thought, okay, well, maybe a Family Wizard, some sort of app, anything to help me communicate a little bit to get access to the children. Because right now he has the children. But that was denied also by the judge. She refused it. She said, no, I don't understand. Like, same thing. Like, what is the judge's role with divorce cases, with parenting time? I believe that from my understanding, it's important to have both parents involved. I mean, I can't contact their teachers. I can't contact their doctors, their therapists. I can't. I can't go to my son's games. I can't go to their school events. So you isolate me completely, and that's okay.
Mm.
In what grounds? What did I do? I've never hurt my children. I've never attacked my ex-husband. In fact, I was attacked by him,
Mhm.
but because of his connections in the town,
Mhm.
that was pushed under the rug, you know.
Uh, and then you got to ask yourself, how long will this appellate case go on for? Could it be?
Could be years.
Yeah.
I mean, I hear people who actually, unfortunately, I know a lot of victims of this from having unfortunately going through divorce with this particular judge. A lot of them don't want to come forward. They fear her. They've been traumatized. They get to a point where people feel like, I don't want to go back. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to think about it. I have friends that had this judge and say, my children don't talk to me anymore. I don't
Mm,
have a relationship with them. I mean, my heart breaks. I hope that that doesn't happen with me. I know my children know I love them. Um, but I've heard people say it was dragged for 5 years. Some people will say
mm,
10 years. Some people have said they've lost their homes. They've lost everything. They've lost, they've been broke. They're broke. And that's the goal. It's to the point where the last person standing, the one with the money, ends up winning. My
mhm,
ex-husband has a lot of money, a lot of connections. So who's going to eventually be, winning at the end? But that's where I said to myself, I need to try to go pro se.
mhm,
And I don't know too much about the law I'm learning, but that's where I say I'm going to continue the fight and try to do this pro se, because then, I'm going to get to the point where whatever I need to do, I will do, for the sake of my children.
mhm. Well, when the judge or your ex is saying, well, she's filing all these, she's vexatious and litigious. That's kind of what they did to me. So I went down to the prothonotary and I had them pull up all the cases and who was filing the most motions. And so I highlighted for the judge how he was filing all of these, and I circled the ones of mine. So his outweighed mine, but the
Right,
judge didn't care.
right. And then I ended up with the gatekeeper.
Mm,
He filed the motions and I ended up with the gatekeeper. What I found interesting was that my ex-husband, he likes to drink. Um, I noticed that, I would have these visits with my children. He would pick them up, and I noticed that he would be drinking, and that was something that, the children had addressed to therapists, AFCs, the judge. And I finally said, all right, well, no one's believing me. They're going to just keep saying, I'm just making this up. I need to, stop undermining the father, stop But
mm,
I was concerned, because I'm a protective parent. I was always
mhm,
about, what was best for my children. And so I hired a private investigator and he got caught, on camera. And I filed a motion. I said no. At the time that the attorney I had was all, he was in on it, but I was very persistent. Filed a motion, and with all the evidence I had,
mhm.
what they said. Oh, come on, Your Honor, he can't have one or two drinks. Oh, come on, a little slap on the hand. Don't
Mhm,
drink. Don't drink. Sure enough, he was drinking, continued to drink. My children had expressed what was going on,
mhm,
witnessed father drinking, putting them in the car with friends, with other children
mm,
that he had with him. Same thing, slap on, no, even though he was court ordered not to drink. And I just remember saying to myself, wow, I'm, uh, I see where the judge, where she obviously doesn't care what the children think. She doesn't care what's the best interest of the children. She doesn't. And with all that, I was still attacked, and I was still the more I presented, the more I was being persistent of trying to get more access to the children, the more I
Mhm.
was like, listen, this is what's happening. The more the judge was was preventing me and taking away more and more access to the children from the children from me. So it's, it's sad. It's,
Mhm.
it's upsetting, you know, to even see that, even with evidence, even with, children being put in such a bad situation, it didn't matter.
Mhm. Mhm. Oh,
But
I'm
yet
there.
I was being supervised, but yet
Mhm.
I was being court ordered to pay for things, but yet I was being attacked, saying I was undermining the father, that I was alienating the father, but yet I had all these accusations. I mean, it got to the point where, the community I live in, that were saying, oh, people were questioning, is it true? Is the mom crazy? Is it true that, what's going on? People couldn't believe, wait, I remember, you always had your children with you. You always took care of your kids. Yeah, it was very, it was hard. Now I'm at a point where I live in a community where I sometimes, I'm having a hard time even trying to um make myself, come out in public, go out in public
Mhm.
in the community I
Mhm.
live in, because of how public my case has become. But then, I've made it now a learning experience, and I want to help other victims, and I want to tell my story, to say, no, this is not me. This is
Mhm.
the corruption that goes on in the courthouse, and it's very, unfortunate, and that's where I'm at right now.
Mhm. Now, do you have
Yeah.
parents contacting you?
Yes, I do. I've actually even become friends with other victims, and because when this first all happened, at first, I was like, wait, this doesn't really happen to people, right?
Mhm.
And the more I, reached out, and the more I started to learn about, the corruption, I was like, wow, this happens a lot. This happens
Mhm.
to people every day. This happens more and more. There's more. Um, and so at first, like you said, they make you think that I'm the one that created this. I'm the problem. But um and now I've tried to become like an advocate for people. I've tried to, I have there's other victims that we communicate, and we try to help each other out. We support each other. A lot of them are pro se, believe it or not, because of um how expensive and the financial burden, and even just trusting an attorney, because there's
Mhm.
even the attorneys are connected. Um,
Mhm.
so, yeah, I've met a lot of people, a lot of, nice, good people,
Mhm.
throughout this whole process.
Well, I would like to have you on as a return guest to keep us
Okay.
updated on everything. And, if people want to contact you, how do you want to be contacted?
Oh, I could be contacted through Facebook's always a good,
Okay.
through Messenger.
Okay. So, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I mean, I feel like I pretty much, right.
You did great.
I mean, if I ever go back on, there's we could start talking about narcissism. We could talk about a lot of things. It's not
Definitely.
just corruption, but there's many other things that, that are linked to these kind of cases. So
Yeah, because they're so multifaceted.
yes, yes.
Most definitely.
Right.
Well, don't jump off. Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these family courtrooms. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie, author of Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, and Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth. Please join us again here with Antonella and other exciting guests. Thank you again.